Hello, my friends. I hope you're all having a wonderful day today. Welcome back to another episode of our PettyRevenge series, my favorite subreddit, because it combines two of my favorite things in life, laughter and a good serving of harmless vengeance. In this episode, there are 11 stories. Story 1 details a frustrated student's prank on an inconsiderate Corvette driver hogging multiple parking spots. Story 2 recounts a Dunkin' Donuts worker's subtle revenge on a deceptive phone salesman by serving him decaf coffee daily. Story 3 follows a commuter's petty retaliation against a rude subway passenger by causing her to miss her bus. So buckle up, fasten your seatbelts, and get ready for a revenge-filled ride. I hope you guys stay for the stories today and subscribe for future videos. This first story is titled, I put a fake note on a Corvette's windshield that read, "Sorry I hit your car, you probably won't even notice the damage," because it was taking up 4 spots. I was trying to find a parking spot at my university. The lot was notoriously crowded, but my campus didn't have a lot of options. While searching, I saw a Corvette taking up 4 prime spots near the front of the lot. After about 10 minutes of waiting and looking for a spot, one opened up toward the back of the lot. Furious at the nerve of the driver being so inconsiderate, I wrote a note saying, "Sorry I hit your car. You probably won't even notice the damage." And I left it on their windshield. When I got out of class and was headed back to my car, I saw a very stereotypical college-age Corvette driver frantically looking around their vehicle, running their hand down every single panel while yelling into their phone. I don't know who they were talking to, but I felt bad for them having to deal with this person. Perfect petty revenge on one of these guys. I absolutely hate when people take up multiple parking spots for their so-called precious car. Yeah, I know your vehicle is brand new and you don't want anybody parking by it, but when I see a car parked like that, I try my best to park as close to them as possible. I also wonder why it wasn't towed or ticketed since it was a university campus. This next story is titled, I served you decaf for 2 years. Hey, Mr. Verizon man, you sold my dad refurbished iPhones and told him they were new. They were Hanukkah presents for my brother and me. My dad was so mad that you sold him used phones and lied to him, and he returned them. He swore off iPhones, and I didn't get a smartphone until I was 18. Mr. Verizon man, I was the only one in my class who didn't have an iPhone because of you, and you made my dad and us very angry on our favorite holiday. Mr. Verizon man, you didn't know me, but I knew you. When you walked into Dunkin' Donuts, you ordered an extra-large hot coffee from me black. You ordered that coffee from me every morning I worked for 2 years, and every morning after you ordered, I or my friends behind the counter would pour you decaf coffee. Every morning for 2 years, you thought you were sipping that sweet caffeinated Dunkin' coffee, but you were enjoying some lowly decaf. I hope my subtle revenge has made you a sleepy guy behind the counter, lying to customers, selling refurbished phones in place of new. Maybe you pocketed the difference in money, I don't know. Anyway, Mr. Verizon man, shame on you. I don't know how I feel about this story, guys. I'm all in for petty revenge, and Mr. Verizon man deserves it for selling refurbished phones as new. But you know what? As soon as the original poster said they were the only one in their class who didn't have an iPhone and they didn't get one for years after that, I kind of lost all sympathy. Maybe the original poster's dad realized that they were spoiled and entitled brats and decided to return the iPhones to teach a life lesson. This next one is titled, Try to Save 1/100th of a second on the subway, wait 30 more minutes for a bus. That's a very, very specific amount of time, original poster. I was at a subway station a couple of days ago, getting back from university. As I got off the subway to line up and go up the escalators, this middle-aged lady nudged me out of the way as I got onto the steps and made me trip over and fumble my bag. She stared at me and went on her way. I was right behind her going up, and she probably saved like 1/100th of a second getting on the escalator before me. As we made our way to the exit and I got up to the door frame, she went out of her way to nudge past me again. She gave me another stare as she went through the exit and stood there looking at me like she couldn't believe I tried to go first or something. There's a bus terminal that connects to the subway on the street level, and we ended up waiting at the same stop. She was first in line and I was right behind her. When the bus finally arrived, she took her time fumbling through her purse, talking on her phone and looking for her bus pass. As she was searching for her pass, she ended up dropping it right at the tip of my boot. She was still busy talking on the phone while searching through her wallet, and didn't see it. I thought about it for a second and decided to lightly slide her card underneath the bus with my foot. Eventually she realized that she might have dropped her card, so she packed up her wallet in her purse, hung up the phone, and looked around for her card. As she looked, she began getting increasingly worried, scanning everywhere for where she could have dropped it. Since the bus doors were opening, I nudged her out of the way, gave her a stare, and made my way onto the bus. I sat myself happily on one of the seats. I saw her flustered and panicked as the next bus was coming in half an hour. The bus started to depart, and I opened the window and told her with glee, "Maybe you should check under the bus." I watched her for as long as I could until she was out of sight and enjoyed the rest of my commute home. Guys, this is something I'd totally do, except I would have stepped on it and prayed that it would somehow get stuck to the bottom of my shoe so I could take her bus pass with me. Oh, I'm a little too petty, guys, a little too petty. This one is titled The Old Uno Reverse Card. One day I came home from work and someone else's car was parked out in front of my house. No matter, I parked outside of my neighbor's house. When I woke up the next day and went to my car to leave for work, there was a note tucked on my windshield. I unfolded it and it read, "Do not park here ever again," or else in a font so large that it took up the whole page of paper. I folded it up, placed it in my glove box, and it sat there for nearly a year until the day that he parked out front of my house. I tucked the note he left me on his window and went to bed. The next day, as I was enjoying my morning coffee, I watched his wife go to the car and noticed the note. She read it with a puzzled look that quickly turned to rage. I thought she would storm over and ask me about it, but apparently she recognized her husband's handwriting and went to ask him. He had to sheepishly explain to her that he left that note on my car, and she brought him over, tail between his legs, to apologize. We had a beer, and he stared at the floor the whole time. It was cool. We had a beer, and he stared at the floor the whole time. I just pictured the wife going, "Apologize to him now. Be his friend." This one is titled, "I'll Take That in $1 Bills, Thanks." So, here's the deal. Yesterday, I got a call from a friend that the money I lent him to move out of state was going to be paid by wire transfer. The place he used is about 20 minutes away, so I jumped in the car and headed on up. I stood in line for 30 minutes to get to the cashier, spent another 10 minutes verifying everything, only for her to look at my ID. The cashier said, "Oh, I can see they didn't put Junior after your name. I'm not going to release the money till they fix it." I said, "Oh, okay, let me call them real quick." The cashier then said, "I don't care what you do, but you won't do it from right here. You have to go outside to do it," in a rather irked and condescending tone. So I went off to get the 2 letters added to the transaction, another 30 minutes to take care of that. Finally, the company representative called her store to tell her to release the funds. Then, another 10 minutes to wait in line again. So, now I'm a couple of hours into this for 2 letters. My petty meter was full by now. When she asked me how I wanted my cash, I replied, $1 bills, please." "What? That'll take forever." "My shift ends in a few minutes," she said. And then I told her, "I don't care. I need that money in $1 bills, thank you." So she pulled out the stacks of ones and started to count the bundles. I said, "No, I'm going to need you to verify that each one of those stacks is correct. Would you please break them down and count them?" With much grumbling and huffing and puffing under her breath, we finally came to the end of counting the ones, all 1,000 of them. I'm actually surprised she didn't throw it into a money counter. A lot of those money lending places definitely do have a money counter. Guys, I went to the bank once and asked for $10,000 in ones so I could go to a club, and they used the money counter. Don't ask me what for though, because I just lied to you. This story is titled Faked Proof that I had a flat tire so the lazy people in my group project would have to do the presentation themselves, therefore likely will fail. I'm in a class where a group research project and presentation is a huge chunk of overall points. Everyone knows in group projects you always have that one slacker who doesn't do anything, and you have to compensate for them. However, I got stuck with possibly the 3 worst people to be on a project with in the class. I did the entire research, presentation, poster boards, and many other annoying things myself. I tried talking to them and telling them that they needed to put in their share of the effort. I was ignored. I sent them tasks to do, ignored. I tried to schedule meetings, and they'd say that they were coming and then leave me alone at the library. This happened from the get-go. It was abundantly clear that they expected me to do all of the work. There was a rule: we couldn't have things completely memorized word for word, and we couldn't read off of anything. We actually had to know the subject. I was fully prepared to do most of the talking and even wrote down a small script for them and told them to know what to say during their part, at the very least. The night before, I told them we all had to meet to at least go over the thing one time. Once again, none of them showed. At this point, I was livid and decided they could do it themselves, which meant they'd get up there not knowing a darn thing to say other than the small info I gave them because they did no research. The thing is, if we miss without an excuse, we fail the project. If we have an excuse, you have to have documentation. I commute and live an hour away, so I decided that I'd conveniently have a flat tire right before the class. I went out and actually bought a tire so I could have the receipt to prove it. I emailed the professor, who said that I could present myself during his office hours. It turns out they completely bombed and not only probably failed the project, but, since they're bad students, might even fail the class. Everybody does have that one person in a group project who's basically there for free marks, and I'm glad the original poster decided to take matters into their own hands. This story is titled, "Somebody Tried to Stand in a Parking Spot to Hold It So They Could Move Closer." I was reading through this thread, and it jogged my memory. One afternoon, around 5 in the evening, when it was around 105 degrees, which is relevant later, my wife, my in-laws, my 2 kids, and I were in a packed parking lot outside of a little market. There also happened to be a fair going on at the same time. There being so many of us, we had to take 2 vehicles. That being said, my mother-in-law is handicapped and has the parking permit that comes along with it. However, there were no open handicap parking spots available, so I found 2 parking spots, one being closer than the other. I took the parking spot furthest away so they could park as close as possible so she wouldn't have to walk far since she has a bad back. As I parked, a woman got out of the passenger seat of a parked car further down and walked up to the open parking spot and took her stance. My in-laws tried pulling into the parking spot, and the woman would not move. So, I did the only reasonable thing you can do in that situation. I stood behind my in-law's car and in front of the other woman's car, whom the lady was standing waiting for. She yelled at me to move, so I calmly said, "No, you can't hold that parking spot, and she needs to move." She yelled at me some more and refused to budge, so I did the best thing I could. I told them that I had all day, and sat down right in the middle of the parking lot in front of the car in blistering heat. After about 5 minutes of me sitting there, the woman trying to hold the parking spot finally moved so my in-laws could park there. Man, my backside was on fire, but it was 100% worth it. As she walked away, pissed off, and to make matters better, she lost her other parking spot, and I'm pretty sure they had to park a lot further than they were. I love how the original poster just sat down in the parking lot for 5 minutes. I'd actually pay money to see something like that happen in real life. I also had a neighbor who used to bring out buckets to save the spot in front of his house. He'd literally bring out 2 giant plastic buckets and plop them down right in front of his house so nobody could park there. But my friends used to be super petty and move them anyway, because the spot in front of your house does not belong to you. This story is titled, "Sent New Neighbor to the Police Station for a Few Hours." We live in an apartment block, and occasionally, new people move in and out. Yesterday, we encountered a new resident, a short, red-haired lady who, through dwarfism and perhaps a love for food, manages to be about as wide as she is tall. My boyfriend greeted her with a simple hello, but she cut him off with, "Shut up, I don't know you." Okay, not the sociable type. Neither are we, so let's not get friendly then. Today, when returning from grocery shopping, we found her trying to pick the lock to her door with what looked like a piece of a paperclip, because, that's going to work. She'd apparently been at it for a while because, before we could open the door with our key, a patrol car stopped, and an officer called out to her. Someone must have reported an attempted break-in. We stopped to watch because, well, it was happening. The officer asked her why she was breaking in, to which she responded that she lived here. She turned to us and said, "They know me." My boyfriend smiled and said, "Shut up, I don't know you." We entered the building after the officer asked us to confirm, and my boyfriend repeated, "We don't know her. We've never seen her in our lives. Can't wait to have more contact with her." Great response, "Shut up, I don't know you." This next story is titled, "Pretending to Not Speak English After We Ask You to Move Your Car Off Our Property? Fine, we'll do it ourselves." My dad just told me this story tonight. Before my parents divorced, we lived in a 3-house neighborhood. Our neighbors to the left were friendly and we got along with them well. Our neighbors on the right, however, were different. Their house was rented out to multiple families, one of them being an Asian family with 7 cars. This is relevant. There was always conflict with them, from 24/7 house parties to trying to break into our cars. The families always caused trouble for whatever reason. There was a particular tree on our property where my dad always parked his car. It was obvious and known that it was my dad's spot. One evening, my dad came home to find the Asian neighbors had parked their car in his spot. It was a dead car they didn't use anymore, probably because they couldn't afford to fix it, so they decided our property was the best place to leave it to rot. My dad knocked on their door and asked them to move it so he could park, but the gentleman at the door said in a thick accent, "Sorry, no speak English, no speak English," which was an obvious lie. My dad was not amused. He told him, "All right, just move your car, or I'll call someone to get it towed." 2 weeks went by, and the car was still there. 3 weeks, and they still hadn't moved the car. My dad got fed up. They may have had 7 cars, but that didn't mean they could park on our property. My dad decided to take matters into his own hands. He rented a tow truck and waited for the family to be out of the house. He hooked up the car and drove it out to a random parking lot in a nearby shopping center and left it there. The next day, the neighbor came by and said, "Hey man, do you know what happened to my car?" Perfect English, not a trace of an accent all of a sudden. "Surprise, surprise!" My dad played dumb and said, "I thought you couldn't speak English. Sorry man, I don't know what happened to your car. If you moved it though, thank you man, I appreciate it." Our neighbor couldn't do much because he didn't have proof that my dad did it. He didn't talk to us or park in our spots ever again. I was waiting for OP's dad to be like, "Sorry, no speak English, no speak English." That would have been the ultimate petty move. This next story is titled, "Don't Want to Get Your Animals Out of My Apartment? Pay $1,500. I'm a male, 22 years old, and I used to live with 3 other guys. One of them had a girlfriend who was over all the time. She cleaned and bought stuff, so it was cool for a while. Then she asked us if she could pet sit 2 newborn kittens for a week, while her parents were out of town. I knew I was allergic to dogs, but I didn't know I was deathly allergic to cats. The cats got there, and after a day I was an allergic mess. However, I'd agreed to them staying, and there wasn't much she could do with them, so I put up with it for a week. A week went by, and the cats should have been gone. I got home, and they were still there. The girlfriend said, they're gonna stay for another week. On top of that, the girlfriend's boyfriend, who is my roommate, his mom had fallen and hurt her neck pretty badly and was in the hospital, so now he was watching his dog at our apartment. I tried to keep cool. I told the girl, "Sorry, but the cats have got to go. The week is up, and I'm severely allergic. You can't keep them here. I told you I'm allergic, and you don't pay rent, so get them out." As for my roommate, I told him, "I'm sorry about your mom, but you can't keep living with animals that I'm allergic to. No one asked me if the dog could come. No one asked me if the cats could stay longer. I suggested maybe they keep the animals at the girlfriend's apartment, which is a whole mile away." My roommate said, "You are so ridiculous. You're crazy. My mom's in the hospital, and you care about my dog being here? How selfish can you be?" Well, gee, I'm freaking allergic. My eyes have been watering, and I've been sneezing like crazy all week. I guess I'm really selfish for wanting to live comfortably. I stormed out of the apartment and immediately headed to the leasing office. I told them that we had 3 animals in our apartment and that we had not paid the pet fee, which is $500 per animal. I asked them to come by later and made up an excuse that the animals were being too loud, the neighbors were complaining, and that we did not pay our pet deposit. The next day, I came home from class, and the girlfriend was sitting, crying on the couch. She said the leasing office came by and said we had to get rid of the animals due to complaints. I replied, "Oh no!" Luckily, they got a warning about the pets, and they didn't have to pay the $1,500. I suck at confrontation, so I love when other people can take the reins for me. OP, how dare you want to live comfortably in your own home? You are so cruel for wanting to get rid of animals that you are severely allergic to. Shame on you, OP. Guys, that was sarcasm, by the way. Please don't spam the comments. This last story is titled, "Threaten to Lie and Accuse My Kids of Damaging Your Car." I think I'll keep my camera footage of your car being actually hit. I was living in an apartment with just myself and my 2 daughters. There was no assigned parking, and my downstairs neighbors and I often ended up parking in spots fairly close to each other. I had just purchased my first non-beater car, so I was being very cautious about how I parked, not bumping into anything, not parking too close to the line, etc. The neighbors, however, constantly parked right on the edge, crooked, and sometimes over the line. One night, I came home from work, and all the spots in front of our apartment were empty. I remembered this because it was odd, and it was a cool I don't have to squeeze or park a mile away moment. The next morning, my daughters and I left to go grocery shopping. My neighbor's car was parked next to ours, and I noticed a very large, noticeable scratch and dent on its door. It honestly looked like someone had intentionally slammed their door into it repeatedly. We got home and were carrying the groceries up the stairs. After the last trip, I was in the doorway when one of my daughters came racing up behind me and said, "Mom, there's a lady asking Anna, not her real name, a bunch of questions, even though she said she can't talk to her." I'm big on the don't talk to strangers rule, so I headed down and asked, "Can I help you?" The conversation went as follows. I said, "Can I help you?" The neighbor replied, "I think your kid may have hit my car with your car door." Maybe she didn't, but she refuses to answer me, so she seems guilty. I responded, "Well, first of all, my daughter doesn't know you, and she doesn't have to answer you because I taught them not to talk to strangers. In fact, I'm going to ask you not to speak to my daughters unless I'm present or give you permission. Secondly, my daughters are 10. I don't allow them to get into the car without me. I can assure you they haven't hit your car. When do you think this happened?" She said, "Last night, and you're not with your kid every time they open a door." No one is. It could have happened when they were getting something out of it. I told her, "Well, since I live on the 3rd floor, I actually don't let my kids get things out of the car without me. Last night we parked before you got home and remained parked all night until we left this morning for groceries. That dent was already there when we left, so it wasn't my car that hit yours. Sorry." She said, "Your car's white, and the paint left on my door is white. It's obviously yours. Your kids did this." I pointed out that there wasn't a single scuff on any of my doors, including the inside, that would have hit her car. I also opened my door and showed her that where my door would have hit her car was above where her damage was. The damage didn't line up at all. The neighbor got very angry and loud at this point and said, "I don't care. You're the only one around here with kids. I see them almost hit cars all the time, and you park too close to other cars. You need to start parking further away. If it happens again, I'll get insurance involved." I started to head up the stairs, and her boyfriend came out, blocked my way, and said, "What did she say?" "What did she say?" The neighbor said, "She's trying to say it wasn't them. She's trying to lie and said her kids don't get in the car without her." I told him to get out of my way and that I'd already shown her the damage didn't line up. He said, "No, it was yours. The paint is white. You've got kids, and we've seen them hit other cars. You need to take responsibility for what your kids do. If you're not going to pay me, I need your insurance information now." The lady chimed in and said, "We saw your kids do it. We're going to call the cops, and we're going to tell everyone here how your kids hit their cars too. Anyone who has a scratch is going to know to come to you." At this point, I turned the voice record feature on my phone and said, "That was the first time you said you saw my kids do that. You're literally making things up now. You can't go around door to door. It's against community rules in the lease that everyone has to abide by. You can't just go around lying because you want someone to fix your car." The neighbor then said, "You're going to take responsibility, or we will tell everyone you hit their cars." I shut the door and called the police myself to explain the situation because after they lied and changed their story, I was worried they'd make a report. The police came, and I played the recording for them and showed them how my car had no damage and my door didn't even line up with their damage. The neighbors went inside and shut their door when they saw the police pull up. The police told me I had nothing to worry about and that it sounded like they were trying to get someone to cover their damage since they didn't know who did it and were using intimidation to get me to cave. They knocked on the neighbor's door and explained that they couldn't physically stop me from trying to get into my apartment or harass me, and that they'd have to file a report because it sounded like they might be trying to commit insurance fraud. The neighbors attempted to tell the officers that they saw my kids hit their car, but the officers weren't having any of it. After that, I started taking pictures and videos of my car and theirs every time I parked. A couple of times, they came out yelling that I wasn't allowed to film their car without permission. I just ignored that. It got really tedious, but it was clear they weren't letting go of their grudge against me and my kids, so I invested in a cheap security camera. I put it in the window facing the parking lot below. I would skim the footage quickly overnight or if I parked during the day for several hours. One day I pulled up and they were out on their porch. I started to walk up the stairs and they made snarky comments like, "Oh, you're not going to get out and video everything?" I actually wanted them to know that my car was still being filmed so they couldn't make stuff up, so I said, in the friendliest non-sarcastic tone I could muster, "Nope, don't need to. I have a camera in my window doing it for me." This was a mistake because they started flipping out, demanding to know where the camera was pointed and ranting that I couldn't film them on their porch and that if I didn't take it down, they'd have me arrested and so on. Fast forward a few months, and a large service van backed into their parked car and drove off. It caused significant damage, and my camera caught it all. They actually knocked on my door asking if I had the footage. Honestly, had they been polite, I probably would have helped them out. but they immediately started demanding that I check my camera and said if I wouldn't, it was probably because it was me. I let them know that I would be deleting the footage and to not contact me again. They tried to say that if I deleted the camera footage, it was a crime since it was evidence of a crime, and they were going to call the cops on me, and so on. Nothing else ever happened, but it's one of the few times in my life where I didn't help someone when I was in a position to, and I don't feel bad at all. And you shouldn't, Ope. Those people were definitely trying to intimidate you into paying for their damage that probably happened somewhere else. It's funny how karma came back and got them when a truck backed into their car. It's like the universe wanted this petty revenge to happen. Below are my opinions on each of the stories. Story 1. I put a fake note on a Corvette's windshield that read, "Sorry I hit your car. You probably won't even notice the damage because it was taking up 4 spots. Oh, this is petty revenge at its finest. That Corvette driver hogging 4 prime parking spots at a crowded university lot is the kind of selfishness that deserves a little chaos. Your fake note saying, 'Sorry I hit your car,' was a brilliant way to make them sweat without causing any real harm. I can just imagine that stereotypical college bro freaking out, inspecting every inch of his precious car while yelling into his phone. Hilarious. I'm with you on hating people who park like they own the lot, and your comment about parking extra close to them resonates with me. This story's a perfect, harmless jab at an inconsiderate jerk, and I'm here for it. Story 2. I served you decaf for 2 years. This one's got me torn. Mr. Verizon man selling refurbished iPhones as new to your dad was a scummy move, especially ruining your Hanukkah gift vibes. Serving him decaf every morning for 2 years is such a sneaky, long-game revenge. I love the dedication. The thought of him groggily wondering why he's so tired behind the counter is pure gold. But I gotta agree with your take. The OP's complaint about not getting an iPhone until 18 feels a bit entitled, which takes some of the sting out of their sob story. Still, the decaf switch is a classic subtle burn that hits just right for his shady business practices. Story 3. Try to save 1/100th of a second on the subway, wait 30 more minutes for a bus. This story had me cackling. That middle-aged lady nudging you out of the way on the escalator for a fraction of a second's gain is so petty, it's almost admirable. Kicking her bus pass under the bus while she fumbled on her phone? Absolute genius. The image of her panicking as you gleefully shouted, "Maybe you should check under the bus," from the window is peak petty revenge. I'm totally with you. I'd have been tempted to stick that pass to my shoe and walk off with it. This story's a perfect reminder that small acts of rudeness can come back to bite you in the most satisfying way. Story 4. The old Uno reverse card. This is short, sweet, and oh so satisfying. The neighbor leaving a threatening "do not park here ever again," or else note on your car for parking in front of their house is such a power trip. Returning the exact same note to their windshield a year later? That's the ultimate Uno reverse card. I can picture the wife's rage turning to embarrassment when she recognized her husband's handwriting, dragging him over to apologize while he stared at the floor. Sharing a beer afterward just seals the deal. Petty, effective, and no hard feelings. This story's a masterclass in keeping it simple and letting karma do the talking. Story 5. I'll take that in $1 bills, thanks. I'm living for this level of pettiness. That cashier's condescending go-outside attitude over a simple name error was infuriating, especially after you waited hours to fix it. Requesting $1,000 in $1 bills and making her count every single one by hand? That's a power move. Her grumbling while you stood your ground is so satisfying, I can almost hear her huffing. Your fake story about wanting $10,000 in ones for a club had me chuckling. Nice touch. This story's a great example of how to turn a rude interaction into a lesson in patience for someone who deserves it. Story 6. Faked proof that I had a flat tire so the lazy people in my group project would have to do the presentation themselves, therefore likely will fail. This one hits home for anyone who's carried a group project. Those 3 slackers leaving you to do all the work, research, poster boards, everything, is maddening. Your plan to fake a flat tire with a receipt to skip the presentation and let them bomb it was brilliant. Knowing they likely failed the project and maybe the class while you got to present solo later feels like sweet justice. I've been stuck with free riders like that too, and watching them crash and burn is so satisfying. This story's a perfect reminder that sometimes stepping back is the best way to teach lazy teammates a lesson. Story 7. Somebody tried to stand in a parking spot to hold it so they could move closer. This story is pure gold. That woman standing in a handicapped parking spot to save it for her car in 105-degree heat was so selfish, especially when your mother-in-law needed it for her bad back. Sitting down in the middle of the lot to block her car in return? Iconic! I can feel the heat on your backside, but it was totally worth it to see her lose both the spot and her original parking place. Your story about your neighbor's buckets to reserve street parking hits home. My friends would have moved those too. This story is a hilarious lesson in not messing with someone's family parking needs. Story 8. Sent new neighbor to the police station for a few hours. Oh, this is deliciously petty. The new neighbor's "shut up, I don't know you" response to your boyfriend's friendly hello was so unnecessarily rude. When she was caught picking her lock and tried to claim you knew her, your boyfriend's "we don't know her" comeback was the perfect Uno reverse. Watching her deal with the police while you walked away must have felt so good. I love how you echoed her own words back to her. It's such a clean, no-effort revenge. This story is a great reminder that rudeness can backfire spectacularly when you least expect it. Story 9. Pretending to not speak English after we ask you to move your car off our property. Fine, we'll do it ourselves. This one had me grinning. The neighbor parking their dead car in your dad's spot and pulling the no-speak English card was such a blatant dodge. Your dad renting a tow truck to dump it in a random lot was a boss move, especially when the neighbor suddenly spoke perfect English to ask about it. The "I thought you couldn't speak English" retort is pure gold. I was waiting for your dad to hit them with a "sorry, no speak English" right back. That would have been the cherry on top. This story is a perfect example of taking matters into your own hands when someone tries to play dumb. Story 10. Don't want to get your animals out of my apartment. Pay $1,500. I feel you on this one. Being deathly allergic to cats and having to deal with unapproved pets in your apartment is a nightmare. The girlfriend and your roommate ignoring your allergies and keeping the cats and dog around without even asking? That's beyond inconsiderate. Reporting them to the leasing office for the $1,500 pet fee violation was a smart, indirect way to handle it without confrontation. The girlfriend crying on the couch after the warning is just the icing on the cake. Your sarcastic "how dare you want to live comfortably" is so relatable. Nobody should have to suffer allergies in their own home. This story's a great win for standing up for your health. Story 11. Threatened to lie and accuse my kids of damaging your car? I think I'll keep my camera footage of your car being actually hit. This story is so satisfying. Those neighbors trying to pin their car's dent on your 10-year-old daughters with no evidence and threatening insurance fraud is infuriating. Their intimidation tactics, blocking your way, lying about seeing your kids hit their car, were low. Recording their threats and showing the police how the damage didn't line up was a smart move to shut them down. Investing in that security camera was genius, and refusing to share the footage of the real hit and run after their attitude, ice cold and well-deserved. I love that you stayed polite while letting karma do the work. This story's a perfect example of protecting your family and letting bullies dig their own graves. And that's it for another episode of our Petty Revenge series. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a thumbs up. If you aren't subscribed, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future stories. See you all in the next one.